I had an athlete, I was talking to her a couple of weeks ago, right after they went home for the summer. She asked me this similar question, like, how much should I be on the erg every week? And I think of it kind of like you were just talking about. You'll start to specify your training closer and closer to, spring racing season, right? Training gets more specific. You can think of summer training the same way. The closer you get to whatever your start date is with your team in the fall, you want to make sure that you're getting more and more specific the closer you get to that date. So my suggestion to her was June, like, make sure you're on the erg maybe once or twice a week. Like, make sure it's in there. It definitely needs to be in there if you have access. But if you're feeling like you need that mental break, you want to hit the weight room and you want to run, June's a great time to like play around.
All right, let's do it. Let's jump in. Why not? So for everyone listening, we have friend of the show, Delaney and McGuire, back. I don't even know how many times this has been, 6 or 7 or whatever it's been, but we kind of get our quarterly conversation in and catching up on what she's got going on out in Michigan, which sounds like a lot, which we can dive into a little bit before we kick off the main portion of our conversation. But Delaney, friend, coach, great person to learn from. We're going to have a blast talking today specifically about summer training, how to help set yourself up for success in the off season, making sure that we're doing the right things as you kind of bridge that gap from here in late June, to when you're back on campus, late August, early September, things to kind of think about, and just honestly, natural conversation that Delaney and I have regularly, but we just happen to record it and provide it to the audience. So anyway, Delaney, with that, just give a little summary. What's been happening out at Eastern Michigan? You guys sound like you have a crazy summer ahead of you. Maybe touch on how the season wrapped up, and then what's cooking out there this summer with all the stuff that you guys have, regatta-wise and U.S. rowing and all that. And then we'll dive that into a good, 40, 50 minutes of just talking about training.
Cool. Yeah. So season ended well. We have a young team, so I think results didn't necessarily fully reflect, the strides that were made this season, but we were happy with a lot of things that happened this year as far as just kind of changing the culture around training, how we're pushing ourselves, what kind of standards we're trying to uphold in terms of like speed and how we approach, our day to day. And so we're really excited looking ahead to the fall because our core group of leadership on the team are going to be juniors this fall. So like our varsity 8 returns, 6 of the 8, and they were all freshmen and sophomores, which is like huge. So going to have a really experienced group now heading into this fall. And we have a big freshman class coming in that we're excited about. So I think it's going to be a nice transition to see like that the rising juniors step into a leadership role. And with this big freshman class coming in, like kind of being able to take them under their wing and hopefully, continue to move things forward. So, but the energy was good. And in the year, I think everybody, they're hungry and I think they actually really want to train this summer. So, which is good. So I think we're going to have some good momentum heading into the fall. Otherwise out here, it's crazy out here right now. The team is home, obviously, but we have 2 camps running out of the boathouse for the next couple of weeks. So we have the U.S. Rowing under 19 selection development camp. And then we have the World University Games men's and women's sweep squad training out of the boathouse for the next few weeks. And then, of course, we have RowFest kind of like right in the middle of all of that in July. So a lot of people around. There are like 50 to 70 boats at the boathouse right now. Like they're all set up outside, inside. It's kind of cool to see. So yeah, really kind of fun summer for us to have, all of these different people on our lake and in our facilities and stuff. So we're excited.
And the eyes on kind of Eastern Michigan and that kind of being a focal point of rowing, or center point of rowing, kind of heading into the summer, having the U.S. rowing stuff. Like that's awesome. I'm excited to hear more about that. Delaney, one of the things I wanted to kick things off with, just, you highlighted it before, but it sounds like you guys put together a pretty solid season, even with a young team, a lot of athletes returning. And we've had so many conversations regarding just, recruiting and bringing in the athletes that fit your program and maybe changing some of the areas of training to get more out of those athletes. As you guys head into the summer as a team, um, what what's a key focal point for you and the team, right? Your Eastern Michigan team, obviously, right? Your home team. What's a key focal point heading into the summer that maybe could be a little bit different than what you've done in years past? Like, is there any kind of change as you guys head into this summer and trying to maximize? And this kind of preps our conversation, which is mostly going to be centered around prepping for the fall, getting ready for a brand new season. What evolutions or changes have you guys made from previous summers heading into this one that the team is kind of using as a rallying point, to build on the momentum?
Yeah. So I think the starting point for us was one of the first things we sat down and talked about, about a week or so after we got to like decompress and think about everything, was what our returning erg standards were going to be coming back in the fall. And we kind of let that drive what the summer training program was going to emphasize. So in previous years, we offered a plethora of options for testing and returning. And by that, I mean, we had erg and run options, to be able to show your fitness when you return. We actually decided to get rid of the running tests as a way to sort of just drive people to the erg, because I think that in years past, it was very easy to just say, I'm going to run all summer to stay in shape. And I know I can pass the run test by doing that. And the run test was not super hard, anyways, especially if you're like a halfway decent runner. It was 3 miles in under 30 minutes. So, if you do even a little bit of running over the summer, if you're a running person, you're going to pass that test. And the reason we had it in there in the past was out of understanding for like, you might not have access to an erg or a boathouse over the summer, and maybe running is the only thing you can do. But we've kind of started to nudge away from that because we allow athletes to rent ergs from us over the summer. So we can't give them to them, but they can rent them from us for like $15 for the summer. And it's like, hey, if you know you're not going to have access, you can take one of ours with you. So we're trying to drive it to be a little bit more erg focused. And we dropped basically every erg test except a 30-minute at 22. So that's going to be day one when we return in August, 30-minute at 22. We have one split that you have to be under. Previously, we had all these different, we had a water standard, we had a race standard. Now it's just one standard to get out on the water. So you have to be under that number. We set it at 208, so under 208 or within 3 split seconds of your PR. So like if your PR is like a 158, you have to go 202. You don't just get to go and paddle through a 208 just to say that you passed the test. So that's where we started, because I think that that's what'll drive the training over the summer, knowing that, okay, I have to get on the erg on day one when I get back. Now, the 30 minutes an aerobic test, which we like because as compared to like a 6K, you do have to do a little bit more specific training for the 6K, whereas we want to build a big aerobic base over the summer. We want steady state, like lots and lots of steady state, so we don't have to spend the entire fall building that up. And we can just kind of hit the ground running in September. So, the 30-minute you can get on and you can get away with having done just a lot of long steady state leading up to, and you can still kind of get your way through a 30-minute without having done a whole lot of like high intensity efforts. So that was sort of our thinking behind that. And so far the team, I think, responded to it well. From what I've heard, I think people are excited that it's changed and that it's faster than it was in the past. We also nudged that split faster than we've ever had it previously as well. So I'm excited to see how everyone returns now with that in mind.
I love that. And I have a follow-up question here in a second, but just the 30-minute test is my favorite test. That's what we did when I was in college and when I was a coach. Rate cap 24, you guys are rate cap 22. So a little bit more time between each stroke in a good way, just more power emphasis. And I think it's one of the best tests that you could do. I'll do it with my high school kids, but 30 minutes in an 85-degree garage is a little bit challenging sometimes. So last week we did 20 minutes, which tells a good story too. But again, you highlighted it before, that emphasis on building an aerobic engine in the summer, building the engine as a whole, rather than doing tests that are a little bit more, specific training, like you said, 6K or anything else. So I love the 30-minute test. My follow-up question is, how'd you guys land on 208? What story does that tell? And again, just separate from the number, but more so the story that you guys are like, hey, like this isn't just something that's, by the seat of our pants, hey, we're just going to throw this number out there. It's calculated and measured and probably based off of previous scores and things like that. Give people an understanding of why coaches throw these thresholds out there, at the Division I level, why they have, these purposeful standards that you're required to hit. What's the story behind that specific piece and that specific standard?
Yeah. So we have a split chart that we run off of for all of our erg training, where you can go down, you find whatever your most recent test was, whether it was a 30-minute, a 6K, a 2K, and you can follow that line across to find your steady state, like your hard steady state, your easy steady state, your anaerobic threshold, your VO2 max, etc., down the line. And so we looked at it and we said, well, what's our 2K standard? What's our bare minimum that we would like to see? At the very least, our NCAA boats, so our 1V, 2V, and 4, but ideally like our 1V, 2V, 3V and varsity 4. What's the number that we're calling it? Like this is our standard now. And I think that the 208 30-minute lines up to like a 736 2K. And we picked that as a way to sort of force it in a way, right? Like, this is the speed that at a minimum, even our slowest boat needs to be able to be around. If we want to go win, and so they can decide how badly they want a podium finish at the end of the year. But I like just judging off of like historical data, we kind of know the line has to be moved forward. So that was sort of how we picked that. And then just looking at like our 30-minute tests from this past year, we wanted to make sure it was something where we didn't pick a number that like 0% of the team had ever, pulled, which, that's not even close to what this is, but 75% of the roster has pulled under this number before. So we know that it's reasonable. Also, like we're not asking for something that's totally out of the realm. But it's one that's like for some of our athletes, they're going to have to work really hard this summer. But that's what we want. We want to kind of drive really that 2V, 3V, varsity 4 group a little harder to kind of catch up. Like our 1V fitness level was just a bit ahead of everyone else, like a little bit too far ahead. Like, and we kind of got pushed that second group up towards them a little bit further.
And I think number one, like you kind of highlighted at the end there, like oftentimes the summer is not necessarily about going, above and beyond and going completely outside of your norm in terms of training. But for the most part, it's about coming back ready and prepared and ready for what the fall is going to bring, so that you're not taking, 3 steps just to catch back up. You're taking 3 steps to hopefully move forward come September, where you're not spending that first 6 weeks playing catch up. And I think I love the 30-minute because again, like it's a storyteller workout where, and this is something I talk about all the time with high school kids. And I actually had this conversation last night with an athlete where it's just, you want to think about, like, you don't necessarily need to train for 2K all summer, even though that's your goal. What you can do is you can do a storyteller workout, like a 30-minute, a 5K, a 6K, which to me trains the base of the pyramid, which long term we both know is really that's how you really push the top end. The 2K speed is by having a big base, the aerobic engine, as you highlighted. You can tell the story by training for the things that actually carry a little bit more long-term value. And so for that, right, if you're talking about a 208 and you're trying to have every athlete show 736 split or fitness, that's a 14 split difference, right? So from the 208 to the 154, okay, well, now you know that, hey, if you're going 204 for 30 minutes out of 22, okay, well, now you're close to sub 720 fitness, right? If those correlations, kind of
Right.
equate to one another. And that to me is like the beauty of the summer, where you can tell a lot about future performances by doing workouts like that are actually a little bit easier and a little bit more feasible in the summer. Like it's easier to sit down and do a 30-minute at a rate 22 than it is to do a 6K at a rate 28 to 30, right? Like it's a
Yep.
different beast. One's a little bit more, again, just grind it out at the power per stroke. The other one has, a little bit of that, skill that you have to really train for. But with that, one of the things, Delaney, I want to really dive into, again, I think for every athlete out there listening, like just hearing from a Division I coach how Division I college athletes are prepping for the fall, like you can do that at any level, high school, D3, D1, whatever it may be, club, if you're trying to kind of get the most out of these next few months. But with that, one of the things you said a few months ago when we had our last podcast, kind of right before spring racing, I think it was, you had this quote that's been stuck in my head for the last few months, and I say it all the time now when I'm talking to athletes, but results lag training. You put that into your, again, one of our conversations on the podcast a few months ago, and it's been stuck in my head because I think there's a lot of power to it. Where the chasing of results, the chasing of the numbers, the chasing of the performances are kind of a step behind or lag behind the work that you put in. And one of the things I've been processing a lot recently, and I think it's helpful for the audience as they think about the summer, is outcome versus process oriented goals, and just falling in, or the ownership of the process rather than focusing only on the outcome. And this is something that I've been constantly kind of reviewing in my head as I talk to athletes, as I think about myself and all these different things. But results lag training, I wanted to take an opportunity today, because I think it's very applicable to the summer as you wrap your head around moving into the training for these next few months, getting ready for the fall, as you start to get clarity on your results. Just whatever comes top of mind. I know I didn't prep you for this at all, but whatever comes top of mind, like just elaborate on that a little bit. Results lag training, and just anywhere you want to take it.
Yeah. Well, you were just kind of talking about it in a way with the what did you call them? Like not predictor workouts. What was the word you used?
Storyteller workouts.
Yeah, storyteller. Like so, you could do a 30-minute right now in June, and say you go 205. If you got on the erg tomorrow and pulled a 2K, more than likely, unless you've been doing some higher intensity stuff, that 2K is probably not going to line up right with that 205, like if I was looking at our speed chart. However, if you continue to train your aerobic base, like we were just talking about, on that speed line of that 205, you're getting fitter and fitter and fitter, and you're building this engine that's going to have the ability to go, I think what 205 ends up being like a 720, 725-ish
14 splits,
2K,
yeah.
right? Maybe, in December or January, when you start incorporating more of that sort of like prep work in your training. So that's where I think you have to have the patience for like that end result does lag behind. Like you're doing the aerobic work on the right pace, right, at the right intensity level for enough duration today, but that doesn't necessarily mean that tomorrow you're going to get the 2K outcome that you want. Oftentimes it takes a lot of preparation, both physical and mental, because that's a whole other hurdle to getting the most out of your performance as well, is like, how are you mentally approaching the test? We both have probably seen many athletes over the years who physically have the ability to go whatever the speed is, sub 7, sub 6, but who mentally may not be there yet. Their preparation might not be there yet of how they get themselves, in the headspace to be able to do that. So there's all these other factors that go into like that end result. So that's sort of how I think of it, is like the training you do today doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that 2K score tomorrow. But it probably means that at some point down the line in the next however many months, it's 100% possible if you continue to train well and train, on the speed line or whatever it is, whatever your coaches use to gauge where you need to be at on any given workout. You're going to find yourself in a position to be able to do that.
And one of the things I tell athletes all the time, because again, every conversation I have, it's always the first thing they say is, I want to get my 2K down to this. I want to get my 2K down to 8 minutes, 7:40. If they're a high school boy, they want to break 7 or break 6:40 or break 6:30. And what I always tell them, I ask them a kind of a deeper why, like, hey, why do you want to do that? What's the main goal? What's the main objective? Is that for, just pride? Is it for, getting ready for the fall? Is it for recruiting? Well, there's different answers for all those questions, right? If it's for getting ready for the fall, well, guess what? Most teams aren't doing 2Ks in the fall, so you might as well focus on 5K or 6K, which to me is a little bit more of something you can do longer term and is more sustainable. But I think one of the things that you want to think about is, okay, well, if your goal is right for any athlete, right, for one of your athletes, if your goal is to be a sub 720 athlete, okay, well, what do you have to do this summer rather than going straight up for 720, every week because you want to do 2Ks? Again, it's more applicable to the high school athletes who have a little bit more stakes attached to it, right? If I want to break 8 minutes or I want to break 750, whatever, but we're just going to use what we've kind of been talking about, right? If an athlete in your boathouse is like, hey, Coach Delaney, I really want to break 720 next year, and all they're doing is, 2K, 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 and they're at like 732, they might go to from 732 to like 728 just from learning how to test it a little bit better. But like you said, where the results lag the training, a better approach that they could take that is actually a little bit more mentally sustainable as well, but it's also going to yield way better returns long term, is, okay, well, that's a 150 split. I know that 30-minute and 2K are about 14 splits apart. Well, what do I have to do to break 204 for 30 minutes at a rate cap 22? And okay, well, I want a little bit more assurance that my fitness is at sub 720 pace. What do I need to do to break 2 minutes or 202, right? 2 minutes would be aggressive, right? You're dropping that many splits. But what do I have to do to break 202 this summer, right? Well, now 14 splits. Well, now I'm clearly well under what the charts are saying in terms of being able to break 720. And you don't have to choose to go that path, because you really have to make a choice, right? What are you prepping for? Are you trying to build the engine, or are you trying to just get the 2K down for whatever external reason that you're trying to navigate? Well, how about have both, right? How about train in a way that sets you up long term for the fall, for the winter, all these different things, and let the 2K fitness be a byproduct of that, where pretty confidently, hey, you know what, this fall I broke 202 for 2K. I still haven't done a 2K, for 30 minutes, sorry. I broke 202 for 30 minutes. I still haven't done a 2K, but I'm pretty confident on that first one I should be breaking 720, right? Because that's only 12 splits difference. I'm in a pretty good spot, right? And that you could take that for boys, for college athletes, both men and women going for whatever, right? Like, workouts tell a story. And if your fall test is a 5K, right, which is very common for high school athletes, okay, well, maybe that's 7 to 9 splits difference, whether you're a high school boy or a high school girl, right? Okay, well, you want to break 8 minutes. What can you do to get your 5K under 207? Yep. Right, under 209 even, right, to kind of put yourself in the fight. If you're a high school boy and you're trying to break 7 minutes, okay, well, can you get that thing down to 152 for 5K? Right, and the correlation aligns, but you're emphasizing that base of the pyramid rather than just the peak. And last thing, and I'll let you kind of chime in here because I know I'm rambling, which I do. But I've been having this conversation a lot with athletes in the sense that if you put 2K at the top of the pyramid, right, that's kind of like this is your engine as it currently stands. And you have two decisions, right? You can either refine the fuel that goes into the engine right? Maybe get a little bit of marginal gains and this and that. Or like you said, this summer, you can focus on why not building a bigger engine, right? Because you widen that base, well, now the peak is going to be at a higher point. And you don't necessarily need to see that on paper today. It's going to come down the line because you're going to do other stuff at, down the line. But take this summer and build that wide base, right?
Yep.
And, whatever the peak of that base is, it might be 30-minute or 6K or whatever it may be, but train for that and you're going to start to see an elevation. Anyway.
Yeah.
What can you add to that, right? What do you think about when you think about that ramble that I just put on?
Yeah. I listened to a podcast a couple of months ago now, but it was talking about running, but applicable to any endurance sport. But I've been doing a lot of running, so for me, I was interested in it because it made sense to me. But they were talking about, okay, if you want to get your marathon time down, the number one thing that's going to help the most is be able to run as many miles as you can safely, easily, like at an easy pace. And you just want to keep trying to drive your easy pace faster and faster and faster. So the more miles you run, ideally, like that easy pace gets faster at the same effort level. And I really like that idea because it sets a floor for you, right? And you can do it in rowing too. So we're talking about building an aerobic engine over the summer. In order to do that, you're doing a lot of easy, minutes on the machine or on the water. So can you keep pushing that steady state pace that's easy effort wise? Like if you're using like an effort, 1 to 10 scale or whatever, in that 2 to 3 range, like you could do this all day kind of feeling. Can you see those splits progress? Like, for girls, like if we're talking in that like 215, right? Let's say 215 is your steady state today. And a month from now, you're starting to go at the same feel, same effort, like your intensity hasn't gone up at all. You're going 213s, right? You're moving that floor up. And you're going to keep pushing up. You're going to eventually you'll run into your 5K. You'll run into your 2K. Now it takes tons and tons and tons of minutes. Like we're talking about 80, 90, 100 minutes a day, right? To really get that benefit. But I like that idea because really so much of what we do can be accomplished by doing just a lot of easy time on the machine or in the boat. But I think that's the catch 22 is people want the quick, they want the quick fix, right? They want the, super, you and I talk about it. We love the dirty dozen because it's like an old people, it's an old person workout to get like a little blast of like hard, but it's 12 minutes of work, it's like that quick fix. It gives you that feel that like, I did something hard. I feel good. Right. But if you and I really wanted to go and train to get faster today, to try to really get our 2K times down, we'd probably want to get on and do like an 80-minute, 90-minute session easy, rather than a dirty dozen right now. Right. So that's kind of the way I think of it is like, can you keep pushing your floor up and up and up? Right. Because eventually you're going to run into your current ceiling and now where your ceiling's got to go up then. So everything just keeps moving up the more you are able to raise the floor.
And that's the thing. It's like the shorter pieces are more attractive. They're easier. They're not easier,
fun.
but they're more fun. Your attention span can kind of easily adjust to 500-meter intervals or 2-minute intervals or 1-minute shots and this and that, right? Like, but again, what you're doing in many ways is you're refining the fuel in the engine versus building that bigger engine. And I love what you said, where it's like, to me, it also comes back to when you try to simplify training, it's okay, well, I don't need, 24 different steady state workouts. Can I just get better at 3x20? Right? Can I, if 3x20 right now, and it's a struggle for me to hold 210 if I'm a, high school boy who hasn't broken, like 650 yet. Right. And 210 is very challenging for me. Right. And, or whatever, right? Maybe you haven't even broken 7. And okay, well, maybe now I can only go 214, but and I do that exact same workout the next week. And maybe I go 214 again. And then I do the exact same workout the next week. And I go 213.2. I do it again and I go 212. Okay, well, guess what? You are now getting better at performing that workout. You're also building your base in, over time. You're also getting hints of motivation because you're seeing yourself progress in a different way. And just like we talked about with results lag training, when you go to put that together in any kind of max effort piece or assessment, right, whether it's 30-minute, 5K, 2K eventually, you're going to see some kind of bump in your performance because your overall fitness has developed in a way that is sustainable, motivating. But really what you have to do is get very, very comfortable with the boring of what we do, which is actually the majority of what we do. Our sport is a lot of the work that is required is, like you said, building that base, building that, or logging minutes, time on the machine, time on task, as you like to say. Like, you have to get comfortable with that side of things rather than only getting the quick hits of 1 minute intervals at sub 140, times 10 and then I call it a day, right? I'm just going crazy, for a few minutes. Well, it's not enough work. It's not enough volume to really, again, come back to what really leads to overall performances, 6 to 8 months from now, right? When you're gearing up for spring racing again, right? And you're trying to maximize 2K performances. It's that engine that is going to help carry that load longer term. Now, can you let it rip for a dirty dozen, 12 by 1 on 1 off at low rate, max power? Yeah, you can let it rip, right? You can throw that in because we all need, when you think about an overall training landscape, but this is what I want to ask you about here as well. When you think about the holistic training program for the summer, when you have a lot of autonomy in your training, you have full control of it. It's 100% under your control. No one's over your head telling you have to do this and do that. Where does balance come in? Because we both know, hey, we can be on the erg and doing 80-minute steady state sessions, but eventually you're going to want to let it rip one day, or you're going to want to do some strength training, or you're going to want to hop on or go out for a 10-mile run. You're going to want a little bit of balance, both physically, because again, those meters add up, but also mentally. Where does that fit in your thoughts, right? I know you're someone who still trains at a high level and is really committed to your own fitness, but even just with the athletes that you work with, your team put more of an emphasis on the erg, but I'm sure you would be the first to tell them that doesn't mean your whole life has to be the erg over these next 3 months.
Yeah. I had an athlete, I was talking to her a couple of weeks ago, right after they went home for the summer. She asked me this similar question, like, how much should I be on the erg every week? And I think of it kind of like you were just talking about. You'll start to specify your training closer and closer to, spring racing season, right? Training gets more specific. You can think of summer training the same way. The closer you get to whatever your start date is with your team in the fall, you want to make sure that you're getting more and more specific the closer you get to that date. So my suggestion to her was June, like, make sure you're on the erg maybe once or twice a week. Like, make sure it's in there. It definitely needs to be in there if you have access. But if you're feeling like you need that mental break and you want to hit the weight room and you want to run, June's a great time to like play around. And I'm thinking more in terms of college athletes. So if there are high school athletes listening, this could be applicable, but seasons are a little different. But June, have some fun, mix things in, cross train. July, can you go from, and I'm talking about maybe a 6-day training week with a 7th day as your rest day. Can you go from 2 ergs a week to like 3 or 4 ergs a week? And then when you get to August, can you get to 5? Where you're still allowing yourself like a day where I'm going to go run, I'm going to go this particular athlete likes CrossFit. Like, yeah, keep your CrossFit day in. There's no reason to take that out. You can go and do CrossFit on Saturdays. That's fine. Then within that, adding variety, like you were talking about, like, it's going to get boring just doing, slow, easy minutes day after day after day after day. So I always think like sprinkle it in as needed. And there's so many ways you can sprinkle it in. You can do a more formal like workout where you're setting for some shorter intervals and having some fun with it. Or you can just sprinkle in one of our steady states that we implemented this year that I think the team really liked and I liked is a 4x20 with lifts. So every 5 minutes, you're taking a high 10. So you get to go like rip on it for 10 strokes and then, settle back to that steady state. But it gives you an opportunity to put some fire on the handle, get the rate up, spin the handle a little bit. But the primary benefit of the workout's still going to be aerobic. So there's lots of things that you can do to just kind of add some flair here and there and that breaks it up. So you get every 5 minutes, you get something to do in the steady state. But yeah, you do need it. You need the variety. So if you're feeling bored, throw something in, or if you're go find some stairs to run or find a hill to run, find a way to challenge yourself, maybe once a week, twice a week, where, you're getting the effort level up. You're getting into that feel of ooh, this kind of sucks. Cause you still need to keep in touch with that feeling too. You don't want to get too far removed from I haven't done anything hard for 3 months. But it doesn't have to be the driver of what you're doing.
I love a couple of things that I thought about. I always say, if you're a high school athlete, one of the things I always say is okay, well, what's your minimum quota on a weekly basis? And I think if you're a college athlete, it can be the same thing, but for both of them, right? If you're a high school athlete and you're trying to have a little bit of balance in your summer as well, but you're trying to really stay fit and stay ready, well, your minimum quota in many ways to me is, okay, well, 6 sessions a week, right? It doesn't have to mean 6 days a week, right? You may have 1 or 2 doubles, right? That way you free up a day or two, right? But your minimum is, okay, can I do 6 sessions a week? And then what are those sessions? Okay, well, again, minimum quota, 2, 2, 2. 2 on the erg, 2 cross training, 2 strength training. And then that's your base layer. Okay, now if you have very specific goals, to me, I think it's very, very realistic for an athlete to train 8 days a week or 8 times a week when they don't have, the obstacle of school and all these other different things. Right now, some people are doing work and all these different things. And again, you kind of have to stay closer to that minimum quota. Other athletes, 8 to 10 is not out of the realm of possibility. Okay, well, can I still hit my minimum quota? 2, 2, 2, erg, strength, or erg, cross training, strength training. And then if my goal is a little bit more emphasis on the erg, whether it's, hey, I want to get better, 5K score, 30-minute tests, whatever it may be. Okay, well, if you're training 8 times, well, those next 2 sessions should probably be on the erg, right? If it's, hey, I want to build a volume and base, okay, well, they could be runs. They could be, goal-oriented things. You could go and find the rocky stairs and run up them 100 times. But you hit that minimum quota, to me, you're checking the box of the volume, which is 6 sessions a week. The modalities, which are erg, strength, and cross training. And then anything on top of that you add, which I think it's very feasible for an athlete to train 8, even 10 times. Again, we'll just stick with 8. I think 8's realistic for most people, right? You have 6 days a week, 2 of which are doubles.
Yep.
Right? That's not too bad, right? That's a pretty solid training program. Okay, well, if your emphasis is on the erg, right? For your athletes who are prepping for a September 30-minute test, okay, well, maybe early on, one of those 2 additional sessions are on the erg, but then once August hits, probably both of them are on the erg. So now you're talking about 4 ergs per week, 2 cross training sessions, which again, I think there's so much value to learning how to run in the summer. I think there's value to learning how to pace yourself on a bike during the summer. Swimming, for those that like doing that, I don't, whatever, right? But there's a lot of value to having cross training. And to me, again, I'm always going to be biased. I think you got to lift, right? Because performance, injury prevention, I think it's something that athletes neglect way too much. And I think it's the fault of the coaches. Personally, I think it's something that you got to integrate. And if you're not integrating it in the summer, when are you going to find time to? Right. So that 2, 2, 2 quota to me is the minimum for a lot of athletes. Anything additional to that, when you're trying to kind of meet that 8, which I think is really what you should be aiming for, that's goal specific, right? What's your goal? Is your goal on the erg? It should probably be on the erg. Is your goal technique on the water? All right, well, maybe try to get a single and make those 2 sessions on the single. If it's to get better at running because you want to do a half marathon before summer ends, well, maybe it's running, but you still got that base of 2 ergs. I think that's what I always like to kind of think about.
Yep.
Delaney, we have a couple more minutes. Just and we covered a lot here. It's amazing how time flies. And I know we want to be efficient with your time and keeping it straight and to the point, which is why these are fun conversations. We can kind of just get down right into the fun stuff to talk about. Advice for any athlete. They are prepping for the summer. They want to make some strides forward in their fitness. They know they got to be on the erg, but that might not be their preferred method to kind of go about it. And they're kind of stuck right now. Again, I'm sure you have athletes on your team who are going to fall into that example. I know countless high school athletes are going to fall into that, that group. Advice for them to make summer training a little bit more manageable because they are motivated to make a step forward come September.
Yeah. I mean, at a baseline, something's better than nothing. I think that's one of my big ones for athletes who are feeling unmotivated, or you've got a really jammed schedule and you're looking at your day and you're like, I've only got 1 hour of free time and it's not enough time to get a full workout in. So I'm just not going to. I think that that's the wrong choice. I think there's still, at a minimum, something that you could get out of, getting 30 minutes of something in versus nothing. Now, when you have all the time in the world, do I think 30 minutes is enough? Probably not. But there are circumstances that we all run into where you just have to call an audible and, the workout's short that day because you've got a jam day. I had to do that this morning. I had like a big run workout on my training plan this morning, but I did not have time to get it all done before our morning session this morning. So I cut it short, and it was really hot out too. So I was like struggling. But I cut it short and I was like, yeah, I'm all right with that. I still got some good work in. That's fine. So that's number one. Something's better than nothing. The second one is the best workout is the one that you really feel like doing. So that's where the variety comes in, especially early in the summer. So right now, if you wake up and you're like, oh, man, I can't get on the erg today, then don't. Go. If it feels like a great day to run, then go run. If it feels like a good day to get in the pool, go get in the pool. As you get closer to, like we were talking about, getting closer to that specific date, some of those days now might have to turn into like I'm going to force myself. I'm going to just get started and see where it goes, which that kind of leads to my next one is a lot of times you just have to give yourself the opportunity to get warmed up. Like sometimes you feel crappy. You've probably had these days where you get up, it's cold or it's hot, you're tired, you wish you could have slept a little bit longer, you don't want to, but you get started. And after, 5 or 10 minutes, your body starts to loosen up and warm up. And you're like, I actually feel okay. Like this is okay. I'm good. So sometimes just get on and see what happens. If you get through 10, 15 minutes and you still feel like crap, then maybe you pivot and, and you hop off and you finish, with a run or finish with something else. The other one is, and you and I talk about this all the time, but try to find a schedule that's somewhat regular. It just helps you to every day at X time is I go to the gym, I whatever, go down to the basement, get on the erg, tie up my running shoes. But at this time, I start making moves to train. I think when you leave it up to the day, it's really easy to miss sessions and to be all over the board. I like to do it in the morning. We talk about this all the time. Just get it done right before your day starts. If you've got work, you're going to go hang out with friends in the afternoon, you should, but get that workout done so that you can go and do everything else that you want to do that day without having it hanging over your head. I think that it really helps to have a routine because you just start getting in a rhythm. Like it's all right. I get up, I have a snack, and I go downstairs, pull the erg down, and I get started. And even then, when it's a routine, those days where you don't feel great, you just go through the motions of the routine and you get started and you're like, okay, all right, I'm all right. But when you're all over the board, I think that's where it's really easy when you don't feel good to just skip or, not do as much as maybe you could have done if you had just given yourself a shot to start.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's a great way to end things. I love the first thing you said, which was, hey, like, and I summarize it as have a short-term memory. You have a bad workout, well, you got to work out in, move on to the next day. I think that's a critical one for athletes, because I've been there as early as probably yesterday, or as soon as like yesterday, right? Like even this morning, maybe, right? You said you were there this morning, and you're going to be there a lot in the summer. And the best thing is, okay, well, what did you do today? And can you just check the box, move on to the next one? I think that's a super powerful one. All of those are great. Delaney, any last things for us? Any last things for people listening? Obviously, we know where to find you, your email, all that will be in the show notes, Instagram. But any last things before we call it a day? And obviously, we'll be seeing you, at some point later this summer. But any last things for us?
I talked to a kid the other day who said something and I was like, I love that. Like, this is going to be my new saying for everyone this year. She said it in terms of winter miles, but I'm going to use summer miles. Summer miles create spring smiles.
I love it.
You got to put the miles in, find a way to get it done. Try to have fun doing it. Grab some friends if you have friends who also need to train or enjoy training. But you won't be disappointed in, when you get on the erg in the fall for your first 5K, 6K, 30-minute, when you get back in the spring and start getting out and doing, attacking some race style stuff, you're going to be really happy with what you see if you really train over the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Delaney, that was awesome. This was a blast, a good quick hit, 45 minutes of just really good stuff for people. With that, enjoy all the craziness that you have going out in Michigan. I love Michigan being, on the map in a very, very big way, especially at the high school level for teams with the Row Fest and stuff like that, or the whole rowing community. So again, live that piece up, because that's cool to be involved in that, on the ground level. With that, good luck as the summer, and all that comes, and we'll be chatting again. We'll have you back on, and obviously we'll see you soon. So cool. Awesome stuff. Thanks again for coming on. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Kev.